Okay, welcome back. We're back to our Bible study series, Have All Things Been Fulfilled? This is episode 4. I believe it's going to be the final episode as far as the three passages, three verses that we were looking at. I'll leave the series open if later on there's another passage that someone wants to look at concerning all things being fulfilled. But today, again, episode 4, the final one, Matthew 5:18. And just a reminder, if you haven't already checked it out, check out the introduction. That way you'll know why we're here, why we're talking about. And just as a basic overview, some preterists use this verse and similar verses to state that all things written in the Old Testament were fulfilled in 70 AD. And we're just going to look to continue to test that theory. In this episode, we're going to discuss Matthew 5:18. Here it is. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. So just as our previous episodes, we got to ask ourselves some questions. What was the context? Was this to be taken literally? Could all be a hyperbole? Or was there a limit to the scope of all things here? And, specifically in this verse, what is the meaning of the law in this passage? Did this include the entire Old Testament law, including prophecies, or are we just talking about a certain portion of the Old Testament? So we just want to take a larger look at the larger context of this statement. We'll start in verse 17. This is all part of the Sermon on the Mount. Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Note the highlighted portions. We're talking about the law and the commandments. These statements should not be overlooked. They're qualifiers or constraints that help us to understand the context and the scope of the word all when Jesus uses it. So in context, Jesus is speaking of righteousness here on the Sermon on the Mount. He's talking about righteousness. He's talking about keeping the law, keeping the commandments. And as noted in a previous episode, many have stated that the law and the prophets is a generic way to speak of the entire Old Testament. And as I said before, I agree that sometimes this is true. However, in this passage, Jesus clarifies, he narrows down the scope of what he was going to fulfill. He does start the conversation with a mention of both the law and the prophets. However, when he concludes and talks about fulfillment, he only mentions the law, not the prophets in that portion of the discussion. So in previous episodes, we made the following statements. We want to consider it's not necessary to consider that all things being fulfilled had to include the fulfillment of every word that was written in the entire Old Testament, of every prophecy there. The events after the millennium in Revelation 20 did not have to be fulfilled at 70 AD. Again, this includes Gog-Magog battle, which there was an Old Testament prophecy attached with that. Great White Throne Judgment, New Heavens and the New Earth. Again, there was an Old Testament prophecy associated with that. And Jesus' statement here in the Sermon on the Mount, again, is pertaining to righteousness, the law, the commandments. The scope does not have to include the events after the millennium in Revelation chapter 20. Jesus fulfilled all of the law. He fulfilled all of the commandments. So basic conclusion for the whole series, there are still events to be filled after 70 AD, after the millennium in Revelation chapter 20. When Jesus mentioned all things in all three passages that we examine in the series, for every single one of them, he had a context and a scope for each discussion. And in fact, all three of the discussions pertain to completely different subjects. So three totally different things he was talking about. Luke 21 was fulfilled. He fulfilled all things that were written in the book of Daniel, according to the 70-week prophecy. Luke 24:44, all things were fulfilled concerning the death and resurrection of Christ. Matthew 15, this passage, all things regarding righteousness, keeping the law, keeping the commandments, he fulfilled all these things. But just note, there's no blanket statement in the Bible that tells us that all the events of Revelation 20 had to be fulfilled in 70 AD. The events after the millennium were still future events for John's readers, and I believe there's still future events for us today. I mean, all these are my opinion. You got to make your own decision here. The Bible tells us in my opinion, that we are not yet living in the new heavens, new earth, new Jerusalem. I believe that's going to happen when God calls us home. I think the next few videos I'm going to do, again, the series is done, but the same topic is going to come up. We've got a few ideas for some videos we're going to look at in the future, and they're all going to pertain with this idea of, we'll just call it hyper-present, that we're already living in the new heavens, new earth. I think the Bible does not support that position, and it's just been something that's been on my mind, and it kind of grieves me that some of the bigger names in preterism, they hold to this position. So when I find myself having to defend the preterist position or to explain it to someone, their arguments are always taken from this hyper preterist point of view. And I have to explain to them, look, I don't believe that. I don't believe that's what the Bible teaches. But because that's the most predominant, most popular camp, we'll say, in preterism out there, it's something that we need to discuss and clarify. So again, this concludes the series. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was edifying. If you have questions, comments, objections, whatever, please let me know. Maybe we'll make another video to address these things. So again, until next time, contend earnestly for the faith, which was once for all delivered to the saints, and God bless.